Okay. So first question is about who am I, where I was born.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I was born in Venezuela. My name is Marcos Alexander Mora Lizcano. We have long names because we have usually two names and two surnames. One for the mother and the other one is from the father. The first one from the father and the other one from the mother. So I was born in Venezuela. My father is Venezuelan and my mother is Colombian. And so I had interactions between both countries since childhood. And I lived in Colombia before coming here to Turkey. I was living in Bogota also. I'm 29 years old now. And yes, I was born there and I was raised as usually people are raised there. In a normal place, they go into public school and then public university, and then we had the Christmas thing and the end of the year and some holidays related to the Catholic Church, because that's the religion that is more, the majority of the people practice Christianity, but they of the denomination of Roman Catholicism. Yes. So my life before Islam, let's say it was a regular, normal life, I believe. It was not something out of common. I was in a normal family, I guess, with normal parents, and I had, normal friends. And of course, what ultimately led me to the religion was that, when I was a teenager, I was curious about certain things, right? Certain subjects, such as, life after death, what's right and what's wrong. In other words, morality. I was concerned about that. I was concerned about, not only morality, but also about, what's the point of living? What's the objective? Is there any objective good? Is there any, is there anything objective, so to say? Because, when we live in this sort of context, such as over there and probably here too, and when we are bombarded with many views and many things, we tend to believe that everything is relative, right? Like every opinion is right, or every idea is correct, or every action is okay as long as people accept it. So everything becomes relative. So I was just concerned about, okay, what is objectively correct or good? So there are these things I was concerned about before coming to this. So in my hometown, is called the city, let's say. The city next to my hometown is called San Cristobal in Venezuela. And although in Venezuela we have Muslims over there, but they are located in certain cities, right? At the east of the country and at the northwest. Let's say the capital and at the northwest. But at the southwest of the country, there's no Muslims, nothing. It's really scarce. I mean, I never had the chance to meet Muslims in my hometown. Maybe until 1 or 2 years after becoming a Muslim. So there's no mosque, no anything. The first interactions I had with Muslims in the country were in a different city, in the northwest, like 10 hours by bus from my hometown, because there was a mosque over there, but it was mainly attended by Lebanese people and the generations after them, because a lot of Lebanese migrated into Venezuela 40, 50 years ago. So no Muslims around. It was really interesting because of that. Yes. Okay, let's say first it began with what I mentioned before about being concerned about what is right, what is wrong, life after death, and what are we supposed to do? I mean, as human beings, what are we supposed to look after, right? There has to be some bigger goal or bigger objective or something bigger than us, right? So that was the first concern. And then, so because of that, I remember reading about many different things, right? I remember reading about Jehovah's Witnesses, which is something like a group within Christianity. I remember reading about Buddhism, particularly, Buddhism, that the religion from the East and from India. Buddhism, I remember reading about, Protestantism, which is another branch of Christianity, and about, Eastern religions like Hinduism and things like this. Because I was curious, right? I wanted to know more. And I remember that I was 16 years old, and I still, even though I didn't practice the religion and I distanced myself from Christianity because of some, disagreements I have with the Trinity, I would still somehow not be completely separated from it, right, when I was a teenager. And I remember I was 16 years old, and I was not having a particularly good time, and I was looking for lectures sometimes, lectures about preachers, Christian preachers, and YouTube. I remember I was watching a lecture, and at the right of the screen, I remember I saw a video, and it said something like the truth about Jesus, something like this, right? In capital letters like this. And I would click on it, and I would listen, basically, because I thought they were singing, I thought they were doing some chant, something like this, and it was in a foreign language, and it had subtitles, right? And I was, I was listening to it, and it got my attention, mainly because, my problem with Christianity was the Trinity, right? Embracing the idea that God is divided into three, and that somehow three are at the same time one, and so on and so forth. And what I was listening at that moment was a fragment. I didn't know at that time, but it was a fragment of the Quran from Surah Maryam, if I'm not mistaken. And he was talking about him, alayhi salam, not being a God, but being a servant of God, and and basically refuting the idea of the Trinity. And that immediately caught my attention, right? Because I said, okay, this makes sense, right? This is what I usually think about it, because even in the Bible you can find many passages that lead you to this idea that he was not God, he was a servant. And when I heard that, I became interested, right? Like, what is this? And then I had, the only thing that I could do was to Google, right? So I started to Google about what I was reading, what I heard, and then after that, I came to realize that it was the Quran, and that there was a religion called Islam, and it had many things in common with Christianity, because in our countries in Latin America, Islam is very foreign, right? Very weird. It's not that in Europe they have migrants, so they have a bad idea of them, let's say, or maybe a good idea, what do I know? But in Latin America, we don't have many migrants, and we had before, but Islam is not present that much. So it's something foreign, weird, like from the desert, like this. Usually, if you tell them, I came to Istanbul, and then they would think this is desert or something like this, because they attribute Islam to deserts and camels and things like that. Yes, I mean, of course, when in the place where it started, it was like this, but yes, that doesn't necessarily mean that every place is like this. But so that was the beginning, let's say, because after that, I was googling a lot of things, trying to read online because that was the only source I had. And I had periods of time where I would be really interested, and then I would step away, step back, because it was a big change, right? It's like, this is really foreign. There's no people here that I can talk to about it, to see how it is, how they practice. There was no Muslims around to talk to. But over the years, like 4 years later, I went to that city, and I had the chance to talk to Muslims. And over the years, it was gradual, because I was 16 and I end up becoming a Muslim like 6 years later, 5 years later, yes. It was not that the 5 years I was, into it. It was like, 1 year I was, and then I stepped back, forgot about it for 2 years, and then came back after that, like this. Okay, so I remember when I first stepped into a mosque, I was probably 20 years old. I don't remember, but I was probably 20. And it was in a city called Maracaibo in Venezuela. And it is a very hot city. It's like, right now it's like 31 degrees, but over there is always, at this time of the day, it's always 36, 35. Yeah, it's really hot. And Venezuela doesn't have summer, winter nights like this every day. In that city, every day is really hot. So we went there, and I went in a Friday. Since I have read some things online, I knew what was prayer and fasting, and I knew that they had a prayer in Fridays that people usually gather, and it was obligatory for men, like this. So I said, okay, if I want to go, then I should go on a Friday. So I remember the day before or 2 days before, I knocked, and I asked them at what time do they gather. Then the person over there gave me the time, and I said, okay. So and then I went back the next day or 2 days after, and the mosque was full, actually. Yeah, it was full. But I remember I was aware that they would do a sermon and then they would pray. So I remember that there was a big man that was speaking, but he only spoke in Arabic, only Arabic. And I could notice that most of them could understand Arabic. So what I did is, that I was looking around and I saw in the corner like a man doing some like translation, right? And there was a group of people around him. So I went there and sat next to them and started to listen. I don't remember what was the khutbah about, because the translation maybe was not that good. But it was something about the usual thing. And after that, they went to pray, but I was not praying because I was not a Muslim. So I just sat in the back of the hall, and I just wait for them to finish. And then I met some people over there. They were Venezuelan as well. They converted to Islam, and they told me about what they do in the mosque. They told me that after Friday, maybe some groups would sit and they would talk about their lives, and they'd meet like a circle where they would share their opinions about any concern that they had. That was really interesting, because imagine you have a group of friends, you sit at the mosque, and then you say, "Oh, I have a problem," and then you would make like a shura, but you would try to find advice. So they did this every Friday, he told me. And he talked to me about how he goes and how he tries to live. They gave me some booklets, some books, and then I remember I stayed in that city for maybe 2 weeks, And I went to the mosque maybe 2 or 3 times every, in the Fridays. But it was the same thing, I would go, try to listen, then go back, then talk to them a little bit, and then go. But that was a bit the first experience. Of course, it was really nice because, I was reading online about it all the time, but now having the chance to actually see people doing it, it became more real, let's say, because before it was only on the screen, only on articles, only on videos, but then going and seeing people doing it, it was like, oh, this is real and people are doing it. And it was more like a reassurance. So it really helped, I guess. Yes, it really helped. So I became a Muslim, and that happened in September 2015. So I was 22. Yes. And I remember that, I was having one of these periods of time where I would be interested again. I told you I was, 1 year I would be interested, then I would forget about it for 1 or 2 years, then I would go back. I was doing this all the time. And then when I went to the mosque, I was interested, and that's it. Then I forgot about it a little bit, and then I went back. So, and that's in this particular time, I was really interested. I was trying to read as usual online because I didn't have any other source. And, and I was really interested. By that moment, I was really interested. I could agree with many of the things that it proposed about the, about the belief in God and everything. I would agree in, in the moral structure of it. What is good, what is bad. I was really agreeing with a lot of things, but I was not fully believing, right? It's like I could agree, I really like it, but I was not believing yet. It didn't click, let's say, yet. So I remember it was during the night, maybe it was September 16 or something like this. And I remember I was, reading in my computer as usual. And, there are some articles over there online about the different miracles that you can find in the Quran, right? There are many interesting topics or miracles, that something that was mentioned in there that came to be known many years after, about scientific facts, or a section about the sea. There are some verses on the Quran that talked about how the different types of bodies of water interact. So you would have, I think there are 2 parts of the Quran that talk about seawater interacting with seawater, and seawater interacting with fresh water, the one found in rivers. And I was reading about that, and I remember that the ones about the sea, they mentioned that, the big bodies of seawater, there's a barrier between them, so they don't mix, right? Barrier between them, and that's correct, right? And between the seawater and fresh water, there's a barrier between them. But just to make a side point, just the fact that they were mentioning that there's a barrier that doesn't allow them to mix, that alone is already, let's say, huge, because at that time, how can they tell this difference, right? Because sometimes this difference is not visible. It's not like you have, in some parts of the world, you have different colors, right? But in some others, it's just water. You cannot tell the difference. It's like, it's the same water. It's just one big ocean. But there are differences in terms of the density and the minerals, if it's less salty, and different types of, every sea has different types of properties, chemical properties, and so on. So the fact that it's mentioned, this difference between properties, that only that alone is huge. Right? So I remember I was reading that, and I was feeling surprised, like, oh, look at this. How can they know this? It's really, because the description is clear. It's really amazing, right? That you would find that in a book that old. how this information came to them, right? For someone living on that time, it might seem as something random. What do they mean? I don't know. It's weird, because sometimes some information may come to us even today. We say it doesn't make any sense. What's this? But then in the future, then you would say, oh, it was referring to this, right? So I believe at that time they would say the same thing, like, what do you mean a barrier between them? It's water, right? They would say this. But then I read that and I was surprised. Then the other one was even, bigger, because they talked about seawater and fresh water. And they would say that, yes, of course, there's a barrier between them, but not only a barrier, but an intermediate space between them. There's a space between them. So there's a space in which it's neither fresh water or seawater. It's a space in between. And I said, what do you mean by that? And then I Googled about, these places. They have a name. In Spanish, we say estuario, but I don't know in English. But yes, there's a place, where the rivers meet the sea, in which that area is neither sea or neither fresh water. It's like a mix. There's a space in between. And when I realized this, I was like, no, this is what? And how can they? And I was surprised, and I was scared at the same time. Scared because I remember I was really nervous that night. I was like shaking, and I said, oh, what? I felt scared because, before that happened, I was. Like I told you, I was agreeing with many things about the religion, but I was not fully believing in the religion, right? No, I was not fully convinced. And of course, I was not fully convinced, but for many reasons, right? First of all, I believe because I don't have any Muslims around me. How can I practice this? How can I do this? This is really weird for me. How can I handle it? Is it possible for me to be a Muslim in a place where there's no Muslims, etc., etc.? So I was scared about practicing, and maybe I would say, but what if I practice and I cannot do anything? It doesn't make sense. I shouldn't do it. So many fears, insecurities like this. And when this incident happened that night, I was scared because at that moment when I read that, and my mind made started to process what I just realized, I said, no, I believe now, because this cannot come from some normal man, right? This has to come from some different source. And this source has to be God, right? And at that moment, I was feeling nervous because I said, okay, now I believe. Now what can I do? Because if this is true, then the rest is true, right? If this is true, then all the other things about the religion are true as well. The Quran and the message and the Prophet, everything. So I have two options, right? I can understand that this is true and ignore it. But this is not good, because I remember having read the Quran and reading all those, warnings, like when the truth has come to you and you deny it, then you will have a bad time. And when now the book when the book says you will have a bad time, and now I believe, right, that there will be a bad time for me if I ignore this. Because why? Because like I said before, I now believe. So if this is true, then the rest is true as well. So I was in these two positions. So even I could believe now, and ignore it as if I didn't so. I continue whatever. I'm scared, so I don't act. And the other option was to, okay, now I believe, and I have to act upon it. And regardless of if it's difficult, if it's easy, just do the best effort you can, and hopefully your intention will be accepted, right? And yes, because I didn't have much option. I didn't want to do the other option because I didn't want it to be like an hypocrite. It's like when you believe something and you don't act upon it, that's not good. I mean, that's not a good character to have. And so I said, okay, I will do my best. And I remember I I was scared, but emotionally I was feeling good. And then I kind of like went and tried to do some dua. I remember that night. And then the next day or the day after that, or maybe 3 days after that, I'm not sure about the amount. I think it was 1 or 2 or 3 days. I didn't have any mosque around, so I was not going to wait to get money to do a trip because I don't know if I'm going to die. And I said, okay, let me go to my favorite place. So I usually, my hometown where I come from, it's a mountain place, right? Yeah, has many mountains. That's the topography of that region is a mountain region, right? Like Bursa, let's say. And so I really liked mountains because they were really quiet, really, nice. I liked it. So I said, okay, let me go to my favorite place. So I went to a mountain. I walked a little bit, and I was, in a nice place with a nice view. And I said, this is my favorite place. I feel really good here. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I did the Shahada alone, and I didn't have any Muslim witnesses. Let's say, no Muslim witnesses. And I said, okay, I did the Shahada. As I read online that one had to do it. And I said, okay, from now on, I'm a Muslim. And I will have to do my best as I can. And then, of course, I felt really happy because I had found something important in my life. I think the most important thing in my life so far. And from then on, I had to try to practice, investigate, had to pray, as much as I could. Try to do Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, I did Ramadan next year. I did it complete. It was interesting, but I did it, and it was good. The first year was definitely a year of adaptation, right? And adapt myself. And of course, it was different because I didn't have many people, telling me, hey, do this, do that. It was alone, right? I was alone, but it was good. I think that was in a special year. And then after that, and the next year, I had the chance to move. I had to move, right? Because Venezuela, as you know, famously is famous for the economical and political crisis. So I had to migrate because of the circumstances. It was really hard in 2016 and 17. So I migrated to Colombia, which was easy for me because I'm also a Colombian citizen. So I moved to Colombia. And Alhamdulillah, in Colombia, I found small communities in Bogota and in some other cities. And from then on, I had the chance to, share with friends and have Muslim friends and go to prayer in the Fridays and go to pray in the mosque and maybe do some activities, try to do some dawah like this. But it became better and better and better, and it's been better ever since. Yes. Yes, it was. It was, but I think it depends on the base. If the base of the building is good, then eventually it would work. I believe that it was hard to change many details, small details, like for example, and not having, examples about, gathering with friends and, the things about drinking, because it's very prevalent in those countries. So it was hard, not like super hard. When I say hard, is that it wasn't in an instant, right? It took some time. It took maybe 1 year and a half, something like this, to start to go better and better. But the key point is having a group, having good company. That's the most important thing, having good company, and be sure in your heart about what you're trying to do. So if you're committing mistakes, if you're aware that those things are not good, then eventually you will change. But if you do the bad things and you don't think they're bad things, then no. Okay. That was also progressive, I believe, because I'm not going to lie. At the beginning, I was not doing the full 5 prayers every day. Sometimes I couldn't do some prayers, so I had to, I missed a lot of prayers. especially because you know you're a new Muslim, so you feel shy. You know, you don't. It's not like here you have mosques every 4 blocks, and you know you can if you need to pray in a park, you I don't know there's no people know you're praying, right? But over there you're doing something on the ground, you know, like this. No one knows. So I usually had to pray at home, or if I was in a friend's house that you know I was comfortable with him, and he knew I was practicing this religion. He would say, "Oh yes, you pray over there in my room or something." Like. But if I was in a mall, it was really difficult. I remember I was in a mall in Colombia once, and a security guard told me like what interrupted me during prayer, and like, "What are you doing?" Yes, because he didn't know, right? I had to explain to him after, and then he understood. But it's difficult for that. So it was progressive, I guess. It's like a habit, you know, when you try to build a habit, you go little by little. Like you want to do exercise every day, so at first you might do once a week, twice a week, but if you continue, and you will reach a point where you can do 6 times a week or something like this. It's about habit. Yes. What can I say? Okay, let's say that, you know, I believe that the advice or the ways for everyone to ultimately connect with that part of themselves is different, right? Because I believe this is part of everyone, right? This is part of our nature. This is part of who we are. We are humans, and we have a soul, and that soul is connected to the life after death, and there's a power after that, behind that, and that is Allah who created us, and all of this is in us, right? It's in ourselves. So the way to find it or to connect with it may be different for everyone, right? So in the same way that I was trying to look for answers, I believe that every person might have answers. And any concerns that they might have, because everyone has them, like, what am I doing this? Is this right? Is this not? Is this good? Why am I sad? Why am I suffering? What am I doing wrong? Everyone has these moments, you know, when we are depressed or we are sad or we are angry, and we go like, oh, why this happens to me, or why is life so difficult? Instead of going to other places, like, I don't know, the celebrities or the Andrew Tate in the YouTube or something like that, or the influencers or things like that, or the media or money or things like this. You go to a different source, right? Maybe find good company, read the Quran a little bit, watch some lectures. There are many nowadays. Many people have really nice, good ways of speaking. And give yourself a chance to instead of looking outside of yourself in money and possessions for your problems, try to look inside, right? To find what's the answer in it. To not look at things not for the value that you can see in your eyes, because you might think, yeah, all I need is money, right? But at the end of the day, if you look inside, you will understand that I will eventually die, and what will this money do for me at the end? So then it's like trying to change the focus. So in the sense, for people that have been living in Muslim families or countries, try to say, okay, I'm not going to look for my solutions outside. Let me look inside myself, and let me read the Quran, go to maybe lectures, and find your way. It's not same for everyone, but I believe you find your way into it.